Hello everyone, welcome to History and Culture. When mentioning Yizhen, many people may not be familiar with her. However, when it comes to Yuan Shikai, he is a name known to all. Here, we will not discuss Yuan Shikai's political career but rather a lesser-known romantic chapter in his life. Yizhen was Yuan Shikai's sixth concubine. Unlike his other concubines, who mostly came from prestigious families, she came from a humble background, having once lived in the courtesan quarters. However, more intriguing than Yizhen's origins is the complex and ambiguous relationship she shared with both Yuan Shikai and his second son, Yuan Kewen. Their entangled story remains a topic of great fascination even today. From a wealthy heiress to a fallen woman. According to historical records, before being forced into a life of hardship, Yizhen was actually a true heiress. The Yi family had been merchants for generations, accumulating great wealth and earning considerable fame in the Jiangnan region. Her father, an experienced businessman, understood the importance of education and spared no expense in hiring the best tutors for his children. As a result, Yizhen received an excellent education from an early age. While other young girls were learning embroidery, she was already well versed in Confucian classics and skilled in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Her future seemed set. Her parents had arranged a marriage with a well-matched family of merchants. The plan was for her to marry at the age of 15 and live a life of comfort and prosperity. However, fate had other plans. When she was 12, her father suddenly passed away without any warning or final words. Chaos ensued in the Yi family. Although their wealth was enough to support several generations, Yizhen's brothers, though educated, lacked business acumen. After dividing the family assets, they squandered everything within a year, even falling into debt. Worse still, as a woman, Yizhen was not entitled to inherit her father's estate. Even her dowry was taken by her brothers. That same year, her mother passed away due to illness, leaving Yizhen an orphan with no one to care for her. A drastic turn of fate. Despite her family's downfall, by the age of 13, Yizhen had blossomed into a stunningly beautiful young woman. Her eldest brother, desperate to pay off debts, plotted to sell her to a wealthy merchant in his 50s. Upon learning this, Yizhen fled her home overnight, determined to escape her grim fate. Alone and with nowhere to go, she eventually arrived at the Qinhuai River, where a brothel madam took her in. Yizhen knew all too well what a brothel was. However, to her, it was a better alternative than being sold to an old man as a concubine. At the brothel, she met many other women who had suffered similar misfortunes. Compared to them, she considered herself lucky. At least she had food to eat and a roof over her head. With her natural beauty and the elegance she had cultivated as a wealthy heiress, Yizhen carried an air of refinement that set her apart. Her mastery of music, chess, calligraphy, and painting made her a favorite among patrons. Recognizing her potential, the madam personally trained her. Within 2 years, Yizhen became a famous courtesan. Among the many influential men who sought her company was none other than Yuan Kewen, the son of Yuan Shikai. A doomed romance. Yuan Kewen was strikingly handsome and exuded an air of refined elegance, a stark contrast to his father's stern and imposing demeanor. Alongside Zhang Xueliang, Pu Tong, and Zhang Boju, he was known as one of the four gentlemen, admired for his talent and charm. Yizhen fell for him at first sight. Yuan Kewen, too, had long heard of Yizhen's beauty and intellect. But upon meeting her in person, he found her even more enchanting than the rumors suggested. The two bonded instantly and soon became lovers, sharing a deeply passionate romance. But happiness was short-lived. Yuan Kewen was suddenly summoned back by his father for official duties. Before leaving, he made a heartfelt promise to Yizhen. Upon his return, he would confess their relationship to his family and marry her. Yizhen believed him wholeheartedly. She even gave him a photograph of herself, hoping he would think of her often. Convinced that her hardships were finally coming to an end, she eagerly awaited his return. However, the madam, having witnessed countless similar tales, warned her not to place too much hope in a young nobleman's sweet words. Yet, Zhen refused to listen. She remained steadfast in her belief that Yuan Kewen would come back for her. What she failed to realize was that, in a family as powerful as Yuan Shikai's, no matter how deep Yuan Kewen's love for her was, he would never be able to defy his family's will and marry a courtesan. After returning home, Yuan Kewen quickly put the matter behind him. To him, Zhen was merely a fleeting presence in his life. Moreover, his father, Yuan Shikai, had already begun arranging a marriage for him. Yuan Kewen was well aware of his father's ambitions. As a son of the Yuan family, his marriage was never about love, it was solely for the benefit of the family. His personal preferences were of no importance. One day, after reporting official matters to his father, Yuan Kewen was about to leave and a photograph accidentally slipped from his sleeve. Curious, Yuan Shikai picked it up. The woman in the picture had delicate, refined features and an elegant demeanor. His interest was immediately piqued. "Who is this?" he asked casually. Yuan Kewen's heart sank. He knew all too well his father's tastes. Seeing the glint in Yuan Shikai's eyes, he quickly came up with a lie. "This is a beauty I specially prepared for you, father. I was planning to present her to you after she had been properly trained, but it seems you've discovered her ahead of time." Yuan Shikai was delighted to hear this, praising Yuan Kewen for being more filial than his eldest son, Yuan Kewen. Initially, Yuan Kewen only intended to use this as an excuse to buy time, hoping that his father would eventually forget about it. That way, he could continue seeing Zhen in secret and, after marrying his official wife, find an opportunity to take Zhen as a concubine. However, he underestimated Yuan Shikai's impatience. To Yuan Shikai, as long as a woman was beautiful, what need was there for training? He immediately ordered Yuan Kewen to bring Zhen into the household. Yuan Kewen had never dared to disobey his father and had no choice but to comply. Yet, he knew Zhen's temperament well. As the daughter of a scholarly family, she was well educated, independent-minded, and carried a certain pride. If she learned that she was to marry his father, she would never agree, even if it meant death. Thus, Yuan Kewen meticulously planned a deception. He first arranged for Zhen to be redeemed from the brothel and sent word to her, "The Yuan family will soon send a wedding sedan chair to fetch you." However, he deliberately left out the groom's identity. News of this spread quickly, even shocking the brothel madam, who had never expected this young master to be so true to his word. But faced with the imminent loss of her golden goose, she made sure to extort a hefty sum from the Yuan family before letting Zhen go. Upon hearing that the Yuan family was marrying her, Zhen naively assumed that the groom was Yuan Kewen. Overjoyed, she immediately packed her belongings and, the next day, set off for Tianjin with the Yuan family's escorts. Upon her arrival in Tianjin, Yuan Kewen personally welcomed her and arranged for her to stay in a lavish residence to await the wedding. Having not seen each other for over a month, Zhen was thrilled and eager to share her longing for him. However, Yuan Kewen, using work as an excuse, quickly took his leave. He needed to maintain distance and conceal their relationship, otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. In the following days, he did not visit her, and Zhen, assuming he was simply busy, did not think much of it. Then came the wedding day. The grandeur of the Yuan family's wedding procession far exceeded her expectations, rivaling the spectacle of a noble's wedding. Zhen felt secretly delighted, believing that the Yuan family truly valued her. After the wedding banquet, the long-awaited bridal chamber moment arrived. As the red veil was lifted, Zhen's face turned deathly pale. Before her was an unfamiliar face, an aged man with thick, fleshy features. Yuan Shikai smiled with satisfaction. Even more beautiful than in the picture. At that moment, Yizhen understood everything. She had been betrayed by the man she loved, sold to his own father. Her heart shattered, unable to accept the cruel reality. But as a mere woman, how could she possibly resist someone as powerful as Yuan Shikai? In the end, she had no choice but to submit. Overnight, she became the stepmother of her beloved. The abrupt transformation in her identity brought her immense pain. Upon entering the Yuan household, she was despondent, speaking little and spending her days in silence. Yet, her delicate and melancholic demeanor only made Yuan Shikai cherish her even more, showering her with affection. She thought this was the end of her and Yuan Kewen's story. But after all, Yuan Kewen was his father's son. Having grown up under Yuan Shikai's influence, he deeply understood his father's ways. In some aspects, he had even inherited his traits. He could never forget Yizhen. Living under the same roof, their affections rekindled. Soon enough, they began an illicit affair in secret. During her 11 years in the Yuan household, Yizhen bore Yuan Shikai 5 children. After Yuan Shikai passed away, the influence of the Yuan family rapidly declined. Yizhen, along with her 5 children, left Beijing and returned to Tianjin, where she entrusted all their wealth to the Yuan family's steward for safekeeping. By the standards of the time, the money Yuan Shikai left for Yizhen and their children was not insignificant. As long as they practiced moderation, they could have lived a stable life without much difficulty. However, Yizhen failed to manage this wealth wisely. Inspired by her father's business acumen, she sought to use the money to start her own enterprise and become a female entrepreneur. Yet, lacking business experience, her investments ended in failure, and she ultimately lost everything. Meanwhile, her children had long been accustomed to a life of extravagance. As their financial situation grew increasingly dire, Yizhen was forced to sell several inherited properties. However, the money she obtained was far from sufficient to sustain the large family's expenses. As their days became more and more difficult, her eldest son, Yuan Kewen, proved to be a dutiful son. After getting married, he took his mother into his home and cared for her. Because Yizhen had bound feet and was unable to work, Yuan Kewen continued looking after her, just as he had in the past. Although Yuan Kewen was filial and had graduated from Nankai University, his professional abilities were mediocre. And his career was not particularly successful. After starting his own family, his financial situation became even more strained, so much so that even providing for his own children became a burden, let alone allowing his mother to continue living in luxury. During the most difficult times, Yuan Kewen was forced to sell candied hawthorn skewers on the streets to make a living. Seeing his hardship, his younger brothers would send him 30 yuan each month. At that time, 30 yuan was already a considerable sum for Yuan Kewen, barely enough to support his family's basic needs. Later, in search of a better living environment, Yuan Kewen moved with his mother and children to Ningxia. However, life there proved even harder. Due to their special background, the locals were not friendly toward them. Gossip circulated behind their backs, and some people even secretly spied on Yizhen, curious to see what the former imperial concubine looked like. As a result, Yizhen became even more reclusive, rarely leaving the house. She confided in her son about her unease, and to protect his mother, Yuan Kewen frequently clashed with the neighbors, sometimes even resorting to physical altercations. This further strained their relationship with the locals, making their situation increasingly difficult. As political circumstances changed, Yuan Kewen's family faced repeated persecution. He was eventually forced to undertake hard labor, and years of exhausting work took a severe toll on his health. One day, while toiling in an icy canal, he collapsed and never woke up again. Upon hearing the devastating news, Yizhen was overwhelmed with grief. Among all her children, Yuan Kewen was her favorite, not only because of his filial nature but also because he was her firstborn, in whom she had placed great hopes and nurtured with care. Yet, she never imagined he would meet such a tragic end. 2 months after Yuan Kewen's death, Yizhen, consumed by sorrow, also passed away. However, her grandchildren were too impoverished to afford a proper burial. In the end, it was the villagers who helped wrap her body in a straw mat and bury her beside Yuan Kewen's grave. Thus, the once glorious, imperial concubine ended her life in desolation. Yet, not long after her death, a dramatic twist occurred. A letter from a bank arrived, addressed to her grandson, informing Yizhen that she had 6,000 silver dollars to claim. The letter even specified that the withdrawal required her to be present in person. It turned out that before his death, Yuan Shikai had deposited a sum of money in the bank for each of his concubines. However, due to his sudden passing, he never had the chance to inform his family. As a result, the money had remained untouched in the bank for years. In the end, it was as if fate had played a cruel joke on Yizhen. Her life had been a roller coaster of extreme highs and lows. As a young girl, she experienced her family's downfall and went from being a wealthy lady to a woman of hardship. After struggling to marry well, she was deceived and unknowingly wed her father-in-law instead. When her husband declared himself emperor, she thought she would enjoy endless wealth and glory, only to fall into obscurity overnight after his sudden death. Even in death, fate continued to mock her. Yizhen's life had been shattered by the whims of destiny. Yet, to outsiders, her story was merely another topic of idle gossip over tea. This is the History and Culture channel. Liking and subscribing are the greatest help and support to us. Thank you everyone and see you in the next time.